In the cold blue city of Vereen 9, nobody looked at her twice. She was just another alien girl, thin, gray-skinned, eyes too large, body too weak. Her name was Lyra, and to the people of her world she was nothing. Every day she worked in the garbage district, sorting metal scraps under the freezing neon lights. Her hands were cut, her clothes were torn, and her stomach was always empty. The others laughed when she fell. They threw broken parts at her, shouting that she was waste like the junk she cleaned. But Lyra never shouted back. She only looked at the stars above the tall metal towers and whispered, "One day, I'll leave this place." The air smelled like oil and smoke. Robots moved through the narrow streets and big transport ships flew over the city, blocking the sunlight. Every sound, every scream and machine roar reminded her that she didn't belong here. She had no family. No one ever said her name kindly. Even food vendors refused to sell her leftovers. The world had already decided she didn't matter. That night, when the rain came, Lyra sat near the old energy plant. She wrapped herself in a dirty blanket and tried to sleep. Her body was shaking, not just from cold, but from hunger. She hadn't eaten for 2 days. Then she heard something. A low humming sound, and not like any ship she knew. She looked up. A small silver craft was landing near the junkyard, glowing softly. It was different from the city's ships. Cleaner, smoother almost. Beautiful. People nearby ran away scared. They thought it might be military or raiders. But Lyra stayed. She was too weak to move and too curious. The ship door opened with a hiss. A tall figure stepped out wearing strange white armor. His face was hidden behind a dark visor, but when he looked around, his voice was calm. "Is anyone here?" He said. No one answered. Lyra's voice trembled. Who are you?" The figure turned. His helmet opened slowly, revealing a face she had never seen before. Not blue, not gray, not scaled. His skin was pale, his eyes brown, his hair short. He was human. Lyra had heard stories about them. Creatures from a far-off world called Earth. They were said to be dangerous, emotional, unpredictable. Some said they had destroyed their own planet with war. Others said they were kind, and fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. But this was her first time seeing one. The human looked at her, not with disgust or fear, but with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked. No one had ever asked her that before. She tried to speak, but only coughed. The human rushed to her side, pulling something from his belt, a small pack of food. He opened it and handed it to her. "Here, eat." Lyra stared at it, shaking. "Why, are you giving this to me?" "Because you need it," he said simply. She ate slowly, almost in disbelief. The taste was soft, warm, nothing like the dry scraps she used to steal. Tears filled her eyes. "What's your name?" the human asked. "Lyra," she whispered. "I'm Captain Mason," he replied. "I'm not from here." "I know," she said weakly. "Humans never come to Vereen 9. Mason looked around at the dirty streets and broken towers. "Maybe that's the problem," he said. Before she could ask what he meant, lights flashed in the distance, red, sharp, and moving fast. "Patrol drones, they're coming," she said in fear. "You have to leave. They don't like outsiders." Mason stood tall. "Let them come." "No." Lyra grabbed his arm. "They will kill you. They kill anyone not from here." He looked down at her with a half smile. "Then they'll learn humans don't die easy." The sound of engines grew louder. Lyra's heart raced. For the first time in her life, someone was standing beside her, not laughing, not hurting, but protecting. And as the patrol lights closed in, she realized something she had never dared to believe before. Maybe not all worlds were cruel. Maybe not all people walked away. Maybe this human, this stranger one, was the start of everything changing. The night sky flashed white as the drones arrived. The human raised his weapon. Lyra held her breath. The story of a forgotten girl and a human from the stars had just begun. The air shook with the sound of engines. Red lights flashed over the broken metal heaps of the junkyard. The patrol drones of Vereen 9 had arrived. Lyra froze. Her thin body trembled as the humming grew louder. The drones had sharp wings like steel knives, and their glowing eyes scanned everything. They were built to kill. Mason stood in front of her, calm and focused. The human didn't run. He didn't even hide. Instead, he pulled out a strange device from his arm. It unfolded into a long weapon that pulsed with blue light. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. Lyra's heart pounded. You can't fight them. There are too many. But Mason didn't answer. The first drone spotted them and fired a burst of red plasma. The ground exploded beside them, scattering metal and sparks. Mason aimed and fired once. His shot cut through the night in a flash of blue energy. The drone dropped from the sky, smoking and broken. Lyra gasped. She had never seen anything like it. More drones swarmed down, their lights flashing like angry eyes. Mason moved fast, faster than anything she'd ever seen. He rolled, ducked, and fired again and again. Each shot hit perfectly. His calmness felt unreal, almost cold. Still, one drone slipped through. It aimed straight for Lyra. She screamed. Before she could move, Mason threw himself between her and the drone's blast. The energy hit his shoulder armor, burning through metal. He fell hard, but his weapon still fired one last shot, destroying the drone in midair. Lyra crawled to him. "You're hurt." He gritted his teeth. "I've had worse." Blood leaked through his armor, but he didn't stop. "We need to move. More will come." Lyra looked around. "There's an old tunnel under the energy plant," she said. "No one goes there anymore." Mason nodded. "Show me." Together they ran through the rain and smoke, hiding behind wrecked ships and broken machines. The city alarms began to scream in the distance. Vereen 9's security forces were waking up. As they reached the old tunnel, Lyra pushed open a rusted gate. The smell of oil and dust hit them. The tunnel was dark, long and full of dripping pipes. Mason followed, his flashlight cutting through the dark. "You know this place well," he said. "I used to sleep here," she whispered, when the streets were too dangerous. They stopped deep inside, where the sound of the city faded. Mason sat against a wall, his face pale. His shoulder was burned badly. Lyra tore a piece of cloth from her clothes and pressed it gently to the wound. He winced but said nothing. "Why did you help me?" she finally asked. "You could have left. Everyone else does." Mason looked at her with tired eyes. "Because I saw you starving, and no one cared. Where I come from, that's not right," she lowered her head. "Here, it's normal." He shook his head. "Then your world forgot what it means to be alive." Lyra didn't understand humans fully, but his words felt warm, like light in a cold place. After a long silence, she asked, "Why are you here? Vereen 9 doesn't welcome humans." "I'm looking for something," Mason said. "Or maybe someone." "Who?" "A scientist named Dr. Helix. He was taken by your government." "He knows something. Something big. Something they want to hide." Lyra's eyes widened. "Dr. Helix?" "He was working on the energy cores. They said he disappeared." "He didn't disappear," Mason said softly. "He was captured." Before she could ask more, footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Metal boots, many of them. Lyra's blood ran cold. "They found us." Mason grabbed his weapon and stood. "Stay behind me." From the darkness, armored soldiers appeared, their rifles glowing red. The leader and a tall officer with glowing implants, he stepped forward. "There he is," the officer sneered. "The human." He looked at Lyra. "And the trash girl. You helped him? Then you'll both die." Lyra's voice broke. "Please, he's not your enemy." The officer laughed. "Everything not from this planet is an enemy." Mason's jaw tightened. "Then maybe your planet needs enemies to remember what courage looks like." The officer raised his weapon. "Fire!" The tunnel exploded with light. Mason moved like lightning, his gun flashing blue in the darkness. Lyra screamed as sparks rained down, the air filling with smoke and heat. When it ended, the tunnel was quiet again, filled only with the sound of water dripping from broken pipes. Mason stood, breathing hard, surrounded by fallen soldiers. His armor was cracked. His hands shook. Lyra stared at him, speechless. He wasn't just strong, he was something else. Something different. For the first time in her life, she felt safe. But outside, more alarms were screaming. The whole city now knew. A human had landed on Vereen 9, and he wasn't leaving quietly. Smoke covered the night sky as alarms echoed through Vereen 9. Searchlights swept over the towers, hunting for one man, the human who had fought back. Deep under the old tunnels, Lyra led Captain Mason through narrow paths that twisted like veins beneath the city. His armor was cracked, his arm bleeding, but he didn't slow down. "They'll lock down the district soon," Lyra whispered. "We need to reach the lower levels before sunrise." Mason nodded. "Lead the way." They moved in silence for a long time. The tunnels were wet and filled with the smell of metal and rust. Rats and tiny crawler drones scattered as they passed. When they finally stopped to rest, Mason leaned against a wall, breathing hard. Lyra handed him a small metal flask. "It's water," she said softly. "Not clean, but better than nothing." He smiled faintly. "Thanks." Lyra studied his face, tired, dirty, but determined. "You could have left the planet when you saw the danger," she said. "Why are you risking everything?" Mason looked up at her. "Because I don't walk away from people who need help." "No one's ever said that here," Lyra murmured. "On Vereen 9, the strong survive, the weak vanish." "That's not how it's supposed to be," Mason said quietly. "Humans used to be like that too, cold, selfish. But we learned the hard way. We nearly lost our world because of it." Lyra frowned. "And did you change?" "Not everyone," he said. "But enough." The air trembled as a transport ship passed above them, shaking the ground. Mason checked his wrist device. A cracked holographic map flickered to life. "We're close to the industrial core. You said you know this place?" "Yes," Lyra replied. "I used to work there. Before they threw me out." "What happens in the core?" She hesitated. "It's where they make the energy. The kind that powers the whole planet. But there's something wrong with it. People disappear there. Workers, engineers, no one talks about it." Mason's eyes narrowed. "That must be where Dr. Helix was taken." They moved again, climbing through maintenance shafts until they reached a small grate overlooking the industrial sector. Below them was a massive chamber filled with glowing tanks and pipes. Machines roared as energy pulsed through the floor. Bright, dangerous, alive. Mason zoomed in with his visor. "That's not just energy. It's biological." "What do you mean?" "It's not fuels, it's cells. Living cells." Lyra's heart skipped. "Alive?" But how? Before she could finish, she saw something moving near the tanks. People. Or what used to be people. Their skin was pale, their eyes empty. Bodies connected to the glowing pipes like machines. She covered her mouth. "They're using them to make power?" Mason's voice turned cold. "They're draining life to run their cities." Lyra shook her head in horror. No, that can't be true." He pointed at one of the pods. "It is. And if Dr. Helix was studying this, they silenced him for knowing too much." Tears filled her eyes. "My people did this." "No," Mason said. "Not your people, your rulers. They heard footsteps behind them." Lyra turned. 2 guards had spotted them. "Run!" Mason shouted. They sprinted through the metal corridors as alarms blared again. Energy bolts struck the walls around them, filling the air with sparks. Lyra stumbled, but Mason caught her arm, pulling her up. They reached a control room and slammed the door shut. Mason locked it and checked the console. "If I can access their data, we'll know where they took Helix." Lyra looked at the glass window overlooking the tanks below. "All those people. They're alive but not living." He glanced at her. "We can still save them." "How?" "By ending the ones who did this." The console beeped. A file appeared on the screen, encrypted but readable. Mason's eyes widened. "They're planning to use this energy on a bigger scale. Whole colonies." Before he could download it, a voice came through the speakers. Cold, familiar. "Captain Mason," it said. "You should have stayed on Earth." Lyra's blood ran cold. It was the governor of Vereen 9, a tall alien with a metal crown. "You came for your scientist," the governor continued. "You'll find him soon." "He's part of the energy now," Lyra gasped. "He's one of them." Mason's fists tightened. "You monsters. You humans are all the same," the governor said. "You think mercy is strength. But in this galaxy, mercy is death." The feed cut. Mason stood silently, then looked at Lyra. "We're not leaving. Not until we destroy that core." Her eyes widened. "That's suicide." "Maybe," he said. "But if we don't, millions more will die." She looked at him. The stranger who had saved her. The one who didn't belong here yet cared more than anyone she had ever known. And for the first time, she felt something she had never felt before. Hope. Outside, the ground shook as soldiers closed in. Mason reloaded his weapon and smiled faintly. "Let's show them," he said. "What humans do when you take everything from them." The lights flickered. The roar of engines filled the air. The war for Vereen 9 had just begun. The night over Vereen 9 burned red. Explosions echoed through the lower city as the search for the human grew more desperate. Every patrol, every drone, every camera was hunting him. But Captain Mason was no longer running. He and Lyra hid in the shadows of the industrial sector, watching soldiers march toward the core. The air smelled of smoke and melted metal. Every sound was a warning, every second a chance to die. Mason checked his weapon, the blue light humming softly. "They know we're here," he said. Lyra nodded. "They'll never stop until you're dead." "Then we'll give them a reason to remember me." She looked at him confused. "What do you mean?" He smiled faintly. "If they want a ghost story, I'll give them one." They moved through the broken corridors, passing burned-out labs and dead machines. On the walls were symbols of the ruling council, the mark of control that had ruled Vereen 9 for decades. Lyra stopped when she heard a sound. A whisper, soft and human. "Wait," she said. "Someone's there." From behind a pile of metal crates, 3 figures appeared, 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing dirty worker suits. Their faces were tired, but their eyes burned with something fierce, defiance. "You're the human, aren't you?" one of them asked. Mason raised his weapon slightly. "Depends who's asking." The woman stepped forward. "We're not your enemies. We saw what you did in the tunnels. You fought the patrols. You saved that girl," Lyra blinked. "You saw us?" The woman nodded. "The whole district is talking. They say a human came from the stars and fought the governor's army alone." Mason frowned. "I didn't come to be a hero. I came to find a man named Dr. Helix." The woman looked down sadly. "Then you're too late. He's gone. They turned him into part of the core." Mason clenched his jaw. "Then we shut the core down." The workers looked at him in shock. "That's suicide," one whispered. Lyra stepped forward. "He's not wrong. I've seen what's inside that place. They're killing people to make power. We can't let it continue." The woman met her eyes. "Do you even know who you're talking about stopping?" "The governor controls the army, the drones, the entire planet's network. One move and you'll both vanish." Mason looked at them quietly. "Maybe, but if we don't try, then we deserve to vanish." The woman studied him for a long time, then finally nodded. "My name is Taryn. I used to work for the governor until I saw what he did to my brother." "You know the systems?" Mason asked. "I built half of them," she said. "If you really want to shut the core down, I can help." That night, in a forgotten maintenance room, a small rebellion was born. Lyra watched as Mason and Taryn worked over stolen maps, marking routes and weak points. The flickering light cast shadows across their faces. She felt something strange. Pride. For the first time, she wasn't just running from fear. She was running toward something bigger. Mason noticed her watching. "You don't have to stay, you know," he said softly. "This fight isn't yours." "Yes, it is," Lyra replied. "All my life I was nothing, invisible. You showed me I can be more." He gave a small nod. "Then we do this together." Outside, the city thundered with explosions. Patrol ships flew overhead, searching for the rebels. The smell of ozone filled the air. By dawn, the small group, Mason, Lyra, Taryn, and 2 workers, crept through the hidden tunnels toward the core. Taryn whispered, "If we reach the control room, I can trigger an overload. But we'll need to hold the guards off for at least 5 minutes." "Plenty of time," Mason said, loading his weapon. They broke through a maintenance hatch and entered the core chamber. The light was blinding. Rows of glowing tanks filled with life energy. The sound of the machines was like a heartbeat. Lyra stared at the faces inside the tanks. Men, women, even children, all trapped in glowing liquid, their bodies feeding the power grid. Tears ran down her cheeks. "They're still alive." Mason looked at them, his face hard. "Not for long. We end it tonight." Suddenly, alarm screamed. Guards poured into the chamber. "Take cover," Mason shouted. The room exploded in chaos, blue and red lights flashing, energy bolts slicing through the air. Mason fired back, moving like a storm. Taryn worked furiously at the console, fingers flying over the controls. "Almost there," she shouted. A guard aimed at her, but Lyra jumped in front, throwing a piece of metal that hit the guard's face. Mason finished the rest with 1 clean shot. 4 minutes, Taryn yelled. Mason stood beside Lyra, reloading. "You all right?" She nodded, breathing hard. "I'm not afraid anymore." "Good," he said with a smile. "Because this is just the beginning." The ground started to shake. The energy tanks flickered as the overload began. The governor's voice echoed over the loudspeakers, furious and cold. "You think you can destroy my world, human? You'll die with it." Mason raised his gun toward the sound. "Maybe, but at least we'll die free." The core erupted in light. Silence. When Lyra opened her eyes, everything was white. Not the white of light, but the white of smoke and dust. Her ears rang, her body ached, and the world around her was broken. She tried to move, but pain burned through her legs. The floor beneath her was cracked metal, hot from the explosion. She coughed, her lungs filled with ash. The core was gone. The great power chamber that once fed the entire city was now nothing but ruins. The glowing tanks had shattered, spilling bright energy that crawled like fire across the floor. "Captain Mason," she whispered weakly. No answer. Her heart raced. She crawled forward, calling his name again and again, but only echoes answered her. The smoke was thick and the air burned her throat. Bodies lay scattered, and guards, workers, machines, everyone caught in the blast. She saw Taryn lying against a broken console, her face covered in blood. Lyra rushed to her side. "Taryn!" The woman's eyes opened slightly. "Lyra, it worked. The core's destroyed." Lyra grabbed her hand. "Where's Mason?" Taryn coughed, her voice faint.
"He stayed behind."
"He made sure the overload didn't fail. He saved us all." Lyra shook her head, tears mixing with dust on her face. "No, he promised he'd come back." Taryn smiled weakly. "He did come back. For everyone else." Her hand went still. Lyra screamed. A raw, broken sound that echoed through the ruins. Above, the city was burning. Towers collapsed in the distance as power lines exploded one after another. The people of Vereen 9 poured into the streets terrified. The world that had fed on suffering was finally breaking apart. Lyra stood in the middle of it all, her body trembling. She looked at the sky, the dark, endless sky Mason came from, and whispered, "You can't be gone." Hours passed. The fire slowly faded. Rain began to fall, cooling the metal ruins, and then she heard it. A soft beeping sound somewhere under the debris. Her heart leapt. She ran toward it, pushing away broken panels and crushed machines until she found a piece of white armor, cracked, but still glowing. "Mason!" she cried, pulling at the metal. He was there, covered in dust, his face pale but alive. His breathing was slow, weak. Lyra's hand shook as she touched his face. "You're alive. You're alive!" He opened his eyes, barely able to speak. "You made it. You saved us," she said, tears streaming. He gave a tired smile. "Good, then it was worth it." "No." Lyra pressed her hands to his chest. "Don't say that. You're coming with me." He tried to sit up but winced in pain. "The blast damaged my suit. My oxygen's low. Then I'll fix it," she said desperately. Mason shook his head. "Lyra, listen. You need to get the survivors out. The city's power grid is collapsing. If you don't move them, thousands will die. I can't leave you." He looked at her with soft eyes, eyes that had seen too much war, too much loss. "You already gave me what I came here for," she frowned. "What?" "Hope," he whispered. The word broke her heart. But before she could argue, a shadow moved above them. A ship, dark and silver, descended through the smoke. It wasn't from the city. Its markings were human. Lyra looked up in shock. "Your people." Mason smiled faintly. "Took them long enough." The ship landed near the ruins, soldiers rushing out in white armor. One of them shouted, "Captain Mason, we've been tracking your signal for days." Mason tried to speak, but his voice failed. Lyra turned to the soldiers. "He's hurt. Help him." They lifted him carefully, carrying him toward the ship. As they moved, Mason grabbed Lyra's hand. "Come with us," he said. Lyra hesitated. The city behind her was falling apart. People screaming, fire spreading. "My world is dying," she whispered. "I can't leave them." He squeezed her hand weakly. "Then don't help them. Be what they need now." She nodded slowly, her eyes filled with tears. "Will I ever see you again?" Mason smiled, tired but warm. "If there's one thing you should know about humans." He paused, breathing heavily. "We always come back." The ship's engines roared. Lyra stepped back, watching as it lifted into the sky. The rain fell harder now, washing the ash from her face. She stood alone among the ruins, the only light coming from the shattered core still glowing faintly beneath her feet. Lyra looked around, at the broken world, at the people crawling from the rubble, confused and scared. And she knew what she had to do. She climbed onto a broken platform and shouted, her voice echoing across the ruins, "Listen to me. The governor is gone. The power that enslaved us is gone. We can build again, not with fear, but with freedom. The crowd looked up at her. Slowly, one by one, they began to cheer. The rebellion had started with one human, but now it belonged to her. And somewhere beyond the clouds, in the vast dark of space, Mason's ship vanished into the stars, carrying a man who had come as a stranger, but left as a legend. Days passed since the explosion that ended the governor's reign. The city of Vereen 9 was quiet now, not peaceful but wounded. Smoke still rose from broken towers and the air smelled of dust and rain. Lyra walked through the ruins, her boots sinking in the mud. Everywhere she looked, people were rebuilding. Children carried food. Old workers repaired broken machines. Lights flickered again in places that had been dark for years. They called her the voice of the free. But Lyra didn't feel like a hero. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mason. The human who came from the stars, fought for strangers, and disappeared into the sky. He had left her hope. And a promise. You said you'd come back, she whispered to the wind. Behind her, footsteps approached. It was Taryn's younger brother, a boy of about 16, wearing a mechanic's vest too large for his shoulders. Lyra, he said, we found something in the old core. Her heart jumped. What is it? He handed her a small black device, half burned, shaped like a crystal but humming faintly. It was under the wreckage, he said. We think it's human tech. Lyra's hands trembled as she held it. Take me there. They led her back to what remained of the energy core, now a crater filled with mist. The ground still glowed faintly, like the world was remembering its pain. She knelt beside the spot where Mason had almost died. She pressed a button on the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a beam of blue light rose from it, forming a small hologram. And there he was. Captain Mason, standing tall in his white armor, his face calm, his voice gentle. Lyra, the hologram said. If you're hearing this, then the mission succeeded. Her throat tightened. Mission? Mason continued, his image flickering in the smoke. I came to Vereen 9 for Dr. Helix, yes, but not only for him. We knew what the Council was doing. They were draining life to power their world, and we knew it wouldn't stop here. He looked straight ahead, eyes burning with quiet fury. There are other planets and other cities like this one, all part of the same system. They call it the chain. They take life where they find it, and silence anyone who resists. Lyra's hand shook. The chain. She had heard whispers of it, a secret alliance of rich worlds trading power for lives. Mason's voice softened. I wasn't sent to fight one city. I was sent to light a spark, to show them that humans still believe in something better. He paused. If I couldn't return, I wanted you to know, and the spark is yours now. You showed me that even in a broken world, there are hearts worth saving. Lyra felt tears slide down her face. Mason. The hologram flickered again. One day, ships from Earth will return. They'll come not as conquerors, but as allies. When they do, they'll look for a symbol, a signal that Vereen 9 stands free. He raised his hand, showing a small metal badge with a glowing emblem. Half circle, half star. Find this. Activate it, and we'll find you. The hologram ended. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The rain fell quietly around her, the sound like whispers of ghosts. Taryn's brother asked softly, what did he mean? Ships from Earth? Lyra closed her hand around the burnt device. He meant, this isn't over. That night, she gathered the survivors in the old plaza. Fires burned in metal barrels and faces glowed with tired hope. Lyra stood before them holding the device high. This world was built on pain, she said. But pain is not the end. A human from beyond the stars showed us that. He fought for us when no one else would. Now we must fight, not to destroy but to rebuild. The crowd murmured, watching her. He said we are not alone, Lyra continued, that others suffer under the chain. So we will not just survive when we will send a signal. We will tell the stars that Vereen 9 stands free. Cheers rose through the plaza. For the first time, the people's voices echoed not in fear but in unity. As the crowd dispersed, Lyra climbed the steps of the ruined tower that once belonged to the governor. From its top, she could see the whole city, scarred but alive. She placed the black device on the edge and activated it again. The blue beam rose into the night sky, piercing the clouds. Somewhere beyond the stars, she hoped he could see it. Captain Mason, she whispered, smiling through her tears. The spark is still burning. Far above the planet in the endless dark of space, a lone satellite blinked, catching the signal, and on a distant human ship deep in the void, a voice said, "Sir, we've got a transmission from Vereen 9. The human smiled. "Then it's time to go back." The blue signal from Vereen 9 lit the night for 7 straight days. It pierced through the clouds, through the storms, and far beyond the sky, a beam of hope in a galaxy built on silence. And somewhere, across the stars, humanity heard it. The sky breaks open on the 8th day. The people of Vereen 9 woke to a trembling sound in the heavens, a deep rumble that shook the ground like thunder. Lyra stood at the edge of the city's broken tower, her eyes wide. The clouds above split apart, and through them descended 3 enormous ships. Silver, shining, wings wide like eagles made of light. "Humans," someone whispered. The old ones dropped to their knees. The children pointed at the sky in awe. The stories they had once feared were real again. Lyra's heart pounded. "He kept his promise," she whispered. The ships hovered above the city. Their engines were quiet now, humming like distant oceans. Then one ship, smaller than the rest, detached and descended toward the plaza. When its hatch opened, soldiers stepped out wearing white armor marked with the same half-circle, half-star emblem Mason had shown her. And then, from behind them came a man. He moved slower now, but his presence was the same, calm, strong, human. His right arm was mechanical, his armor newer, his face marked with old scars. Captain Mason had returned. Lyra froze, unable to move. For a moment it didn't feel real, but when he looked at her and smiled, the world felt whole again. "I told you," he said softly. "Humans always come back." She ran to him and hugged him tightly. The crowd around them cheered, not just for him, but for what he meant. The shadow of the chain, but peace never comes without cost. Before nightfall, black ships appeared on the edge of the sky, smaller, faster, their engines burning red. Mason's face darkened. "The chain," he said. "They saw your signal." Lyra's stomach twisted. "They're coming to destroy us?" "They're coming to silence you," Mason replied. Within hours, fire rained from the clouds. The chain ships attacked the surface, targeting the city's rebuilt generators. Explosions lit the horizon. Mason's voice roared over the comms. "All units, defend the civilians. Hold the line." Lyra ran with her people, helping them into shelters as the sky turned red. The ground shook with every blast, but the humans fought back, jets slicing through the smoke, their weapons blazing blue. Mason led from the front, his voice steady even as chaos burned around him. Still, the enemy was relentless. Dozens of ships fell, and one beam struck the old tower, collapsing it into dust. Lyra screamed as fire tore through the plaza. Mason grabbed her arm and pulled her behind cover. "They want the beacon," he shouted. "If they destroy it, no one will ever hear us again." She looked at the broken device still shining weakly on the tower ruins. "Then we have to protect it." The Chain's flagship hovered above, massive and black, its shadow swallowing the city. Mason looked up at it and then back at Lyra. "I'm going up there," he said. "You can't," she cried.
"You'll die."
He smiled sadly. "Maybe, but if I don't, everyone here will." She grabbed his hand. "Then I'm coming too." He hesitated and then nodded. "All right, let's finish this." They boarded a small human fighter and launched into the fire-filled sky. The stars blurred around them as they shot toward the flagship. When they broke through its shields, Mason and Lyra stormed the control deck. The enemy captain, a tall, silver-skinned being, turned, his voice cold. "You think humanity can stop the chain?" He sneered. "You are nothing." Mason raised his weapon. "We're nothing," he said, "until someone decides to fight." The battle was short but brutal. Energy blasts tore through the control deck, systems exploded, alarms screamed. When it was over, the chain captain lay defeated, but the ship's core began to overload. Mason looked at Lyra. "You have to go." "No." "Not this time," she shouted. He smiled softly. "Someone needs to lead them. You're their hope now." Tears filled her eyes. "Mason, please." He touched her shoulder gently. "Tell them the truth, that no world is too broken to rise again." She hesitated only a second before running. The ship shook as she jumped into an escape pod. Through the small window she saw the flagship explode, a burst of blue light scattering across the stars. The human star when she landed, The city was silent. The black ships were gone. The humans and the people of Vereen 9 looked up at the sky. Watching the bright blue flare fade into the dark, Lyra stood among them, whispering, "He did it." Weeks later, the humans helped rebuild the planet. New homes, clean water and free energy made from the wreckage of the core. Lyra led both races together, her name spreading across the colonies every night. She climbed the same tower, now rebuilt, and looked at the stars. And high above, one star burned brighter than all the rest. It wasn't real, not a sun, just the last echo of a ship that gave everything for freedom. They called it the human star, and as long as it shone, every world in the galaxy would remember the truth, that kindness is strength, that hope is power, and that one human and one forgotten girl changed the fate of 1,000 worlds.